Welcome to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. I'm your host, Fabian motherfucking Ojeda, and I don't know shit, but that's okay. All right, let's get this shit started. Thank you everybody for listening to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. Hope you all enjoyed episode number 83 with Eric Sosa, the man behind Project Food, the food blog. Learned a lot about a lot of different pop-up shops, that are local in my area, and I'm gonna go broke. It's gonna happen, So hopefully, he checks out a few more, and I'm able to bust my wallet on some burgers and tacos and everything, all that. But we're back today with a brand new guest. Definitely excited to have him on. Interesting story to tell. Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Neil Getzlow. How you doing, Neil?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. First and foremost, man, I think I told you, do a little bit of funny haha and whatnot. So we'll get it out of the way.
Yeah.
Your last name there, Getzlow. Anybody ever tease you about that, man? I'm like, oh, Neil Getzlow. All right.
I took a little gentle ribbing in high school. Of course, it was not Getzlow, it was Getz High was what they would call my last name. So it had a little bit of fun at my expense.
No, but when people are talking about getting low, it's like dancing and everything nowadays. So
yeah,
a little different. But I'm gonna preface this episode kind of like I told you before. Press and record. We say a lot of funny stuff on here. We see a lot of stupid humor, and every now and then we have a cool episode where we got like a real like I don't want to say like super serious story, because I mean it's human. It's a human story, So I'm excited because this is one of those times where we have something different. I've had good episodes where we talk about abuse, mental health, and whatnot, PTSD, and we're going to talk about a type of addiction that a lot of people don't necessarily, I would say, don't necessarily recognize, right? And I want to thank you ahead of time for being vulnerable enough to tell the story and really get it out there, because I'm curious, and the less I know about a subject, the better, because I like to learn along with everybody. So I'm gonna just jump right in, and
Sure.
What when we're talking about this addiction, how would you describe it?
Well, we can just jump right on into it. Like I had an addiction to pornography,
mm-hmm.
and that addiction, it started when I was 9 years old. Oh. And so as I was doing some research, and I wrote a book about my journey from overcoming this addiction to pornography and to sex, and just wrote a book about it. As I was doing some research, what I found was that the average age that a person today is exposed to porn is at the age of 11. Mm. Well, of course, I was an overachiever, so at 9 years old, I beat that trend.
And that was before the internet too, huh?
Yeah, I mean, this is before the internet. So here's how it sort of hooked me. 9 years old, behind my elementary school, there was a forest, and the neighborhood kids described it as the Playboy Forest. Mm. So after school, we'd ride our bikes over there, and there was like this little enclave that was carved out around a fire pit, and strewn across the trees in there would be ripped up pages of Playboy magazines. And so you wouldn't get the full magazine, but you'd get enough of the pictures and everything to know what's going on. So that really was the sort of the first time I was exposed. And from there, it just sort of grabbed hold of me and didn't let go. And I know, I think people sometimes think there's no way you can be addicted to pornography or sex, but you can. And I'm telling you can, because for me, it just dominated my life. It led me to do some really dangerous things that we'll talk about. And, it ruined one marriage. It almost ruined a second one. And of course, it impacted me financially, mentally. It ruins, for me, I'll speak for myself, like it ruined how I viewed relationships, how I viewed women, what I thought love was versus sex. And, that just haunted me in all of my relationships. And, that's not even getting into the other side of it, which is who's on the other side of that camera and what's their story and why are they in pornography and are they there on, voluntarily or not. So we can dive into.
For sure. What I found interesting though was that, because you think of an addiction like this and it's like, it's very like, maybe it's taboo and it's something that's very alluring. But I found interesting that you said you were an atheist, right?
Yeah.
And so like, I'm thinking about it from like, okay, maybe like a Catholic kid or a Christian kid, or you grew up Jewish, right? Well,
yeah.
Yeah. But you identified as atheist, right? And so I'm thinking like, so, where does that like that allure, that extra like, taboo come from if you're not really, following the religion,
Sure. Yeah, and again, this is be something else we can talk about. I do credit God for saving me out of this mess that I was in my life. And it starts with Him, and but there are other steps on my mental health journey too that I took that were and very important as well to healing. So. And one of those steps was actually going to seek counseling with a professional counselor. And I encourage anyone struggling with mental health issues, like don't be ashamed to go talk to someone about your issues. It's incredibly important. And for me, it was so helpful, which I'm someone I'm pretty cynical in life for the most part. At least I was up until a couple of years ago. And it's just thought that stuff was all, phooey and, there was no real point in it. But man, this counselor I saw last year, which is when I sort of overcame all my addictions. The first time I saw him, he asked me this first question. He goes, "What did you have to learn how to do what's the first thing you had to learn what to do when you were a kid?" And which I thought, well, that's a very interesting question. Like that question. And I thought about it for a while. And then like the light bulb came on for me. And I had to learn how to be alone. So when I was 9 years old, my parents got divorced, and my siblings were older. They were already out of the house or just about out of the house. So I moved into an apartment with my mom. There was no other kids living there, so there was no one to play with after school. And then, of course, with my mom getting divorced, then she had to go back to work. And so I became the typical latchkey kid of the 80s, go to school all day, come home alone, until my mom came home for work, or in the case of the summer, I was pretty much home alone the entire week while she was at work. And so that's sort of kicked off this, what my counselor called is a shame cycle. And so let me explain that. Like, so on either side of my mom's bed in her apartment, she had these two nightstands. On each of these nightstands were these giant stacks of Playboy magazines. So I'm home alone. Like, what is a preteen going to do when he's home alone and you have all this porn there? Right. And then look at the porn. And that's how I filled. I had this hole in my heart for being alone, and that's what I filled it up with. I'm thinking, okay, this is going to make me feel better. This is going to make me whole. But what it did is it fed this cycle, and the cycle would be, nobody loves me. This is why I'm alone. I'm going to make myself feel better. I'm going to look at this porn that makes me feel good. But then when I'm done looking at the porn, I feel the shame and guilt. This is why nobody loves me. This is why I'm alone. And then it just cycles. And that cycle would manifest itself over and over again over the course of my adult life. And so I finally wasn't until, April of 2020 where I put my identity in God as a child of God. That's when I was able to break that cycle and turn that cycle from a shame cycle into a positive cycle, which says I am worthy. I don't need those things to make me feel whole. I've got what I need to feel whole. And we just glossed over about 40 years of addiction there. So let me jump into kind of how I got rescued out of it. So like I said, would look at porn, throughout my teens into my adult life. At some point, though, looking at the porn and the videos, that was not enough. So this is almost like a gateway drug for me. So I had to I had to go for something more dangerous. And so then I would graduate to like strip clubs.
Okay.
Right. And then, actually at the time there was, when I was growing up living in Kansas City, this has been early 90s or so, like there was like these like peep show adult theaters where they'd have live entertainment and booze you can go into and watch real people, take their clothes off right in front of you. And so that fed another line of addiction. And then, 15, 20 years later, that wasn't enough anymore. And I needed to find the real thing. And that's when I started to engage in prostitution and looking for women to pay to have sex with me. So that addiction went on for a good portion of my marriage to my current wife, Amy. And ultimately in February of 2020, I was going on a business trip to Chicago and set up an arrangement to meet a prostitute in her hotel room in downtown Chicago. So set up the appointment, went to the appointment. As I was getting ready to leave, the door to the next room opens up and this prostitute's partner came out, and he looks like a offensive lineman from the Chicago Bears. He's about 6'5", 300 pounds. He's dressed in drag, and he holds up his cell phone, and it has a picture of my wife's social media account on there and has her phone number. And he's like, "You're going to have to pay us more money or we're going to call your wife."
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. And you don't even think about anything at that point. The adrenaline just kicks in. For me, I was like, I don't want to die here. Like, how horrible would that have been? To get a knife to the back, and then my wife gets a phone call that I died by this hands of the prostitute in downtown Chicago hotel. That would have been pretty brutal. So I just wanted to get out of there, and so it's $200 at a time and then finally at $900 I was out. I finally managed to get out the door because they kept sending $200. Well, you need to send a little bit more, and I'm slowly making my way to the door, not trying to make any big motions or anything. Get to the door. I sprint to the elevator, but I could hear the door open up behind me, and they're yelling, "Hey, you're gonna have to pay us more money or we're gonna call your wife." Well, elevator open, I'm in, and I'm out of that hotel. And but this is, for me though, like this wasn't obviously not the first time I've done anything like this. I've done this lots of times. I can't even tell you how many times I've done it over the course of 6 years. So I stuffed it down into behind this mask. That's why I called my book Unmasked, because I've been wearing this mask my entire life, that I've had all these lies and protecting all these deep, dark secrets. And I stuffed them down behind that mask. And I went on my day. Like, I had all these business meetings I didn't let on. Nobody could even tell that I was just blackmailed by a prostitute.
Right.
And so made it home to Kansas City that evening. And these people still hadn't contacted me back yet. So I'm thinking, well, you know what? I think I'm going to be all right. I might just get through this with just out a little bit of cash. And so went about my business. And then 3 days later, this is where I say, God hit me in the head with a 2x4 for the first time. So it's 9:30 at night, Sunday, March 1st, 2020. And I'm working in my office, and my phone starts blowing up, and it's this couple. And again, they're texting me saying, "We're going to need you to send us more money or we're going to call Amy in 15 minutes. And they also had some pictures that they sent along with it of me in a compromising position. Well, and I just was incredibly naive, thinking, okay, why would this couple call Amy? Because once they did, I'm done. Like, I'm not a mark anymore. I'm not paying you any more money.
Right.
But of course, silly me, they probably had, who knows how many people they had that they had a mark on that they were trying to do this with. So once they had no use of me, they did the unthinkable. And exactly 15 minutes later, after I did not pay them, they called my wife.
Ooh.
And I could hear the phone ringing upstairs, and I could just hear the very brief whispers of the conversation. And then I just remember the sound of her footsteps coming down the stairs and heading down the hallway, getting louder and louder. And then she, flies into my office and she's like, "Are you cheating on me?" And that was the start of this wild ride over the next 6 weeks. Which, of course, my first instinct was to do whatever a good addict would do, which was lie my way out of it. Mm-hmm. And I was basically more sorry that I was caught than I was sorry about any sort of hurt I was causing in my marriage. And I said, this is the first time I've ever done anything like this before. I'll never do it again. I want to stay married, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And, she bought it at the time, although she does say now, she's like, she knew in her gut, that there was something going on with me. She just never had the proof. I never really had the confidence or courage to want to confront me on it. At the time, she didn't have access to any of my passwords on my phone or my computer. So, she had nothing to go on. And so I would just pause there to say, for anyone who's in that situation, like, if you've got a partner who you think is doing something and they're not showing you their phone or their computer, then that's your first sign right there that something's going on. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah. So, but now I would also say too, if this wasn't enough, March 2020 was the start of coronavirus. Right. And so now Amy was a hairdresser, so her job shut down for 2 months. I was a freelance consultant, and my clients sort of dried up for the summer. So we're basically locked down, home alone, trying to deal with this. So, which was fun and awkward. But about 6 weeks later, so this is mid-April now of 2020, then my addictions flared up again, and I set up an appointment to go meet someone I had an arrangement with in Kansas City that I was paying for sex. And so this is the second time now that God hits me in the head with a 2x4. Mm-hmm. So like I said, Amy didn't have any access to my passwords on my phone or my computer, and I was doing all my text messaging to this woman on the computer. And every time I leave the house, though, I am 100% sure that I lock my laptop up, because I don't want Amy getting in there and seeing all these secrets and then blowing up my life. Well, for whatever reason, and I'm going to say God had a hand in this. I left the house that afternoon and my computer was still unlocked. It just never happens. And sure enough, about 10 minutes after I went to go meet this woman, my phone starts blowing up, this time from Amy, who's texting me the screenshots of the conversation I'm having with this other person. And the text message is like, what is going on? So of course I turn around, come home, and I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to say now to make this better? I mean, again, I'm trying to find the easy way out, easy as possible. And I honestly, I don't even remember what I told her that day. But it was all a bunch of lies, and she didn't buy it. I mean, she's wised up now. She knew, like, whatever, I'm not believing your lies. And so she said to me before we went to bed, the only way you're going to save our marriage is if you pray to God and ask for help with your problems. And so I should point out here that Amy is a born again Christian. We got married about 9 years ago. When we both got married, neither of us believed in God. And so we were living a great life before we got married, out partying and just, enjoying all the wonderful things that the world has to offer. So we thought. But then 3 months after we got married, she told me that she believed in Jesus and was born again. and which, again, so for me now, I'm an atheist, grew up Jewish. That like it just blew my mind. Like, how could you? And of course, I got mad at her. Like, how could you not tell me this? Why didn't you tell me this 3 months ago? These things might have been, I might not have gotten married at that point, but now here we are, and she's a believer, I'm not, and she changed, and the things that she believed in and the things that she liked to do changed. And
I definitely want to dig a little more into that right now.
Yeah.
There's so much to unpack here.
I know, man. There's a ton. There's a ton.
Like, for sure. I was like, I didn't even want to interrupt because I'm just like, sorry. Whoa, man, it's so it's so much, and it all kind of built on each other on each previous step. And I'm like, wow, like I've never heard of that before. You hear about people with drug addictions or addicted to alcohol and stuff like that, and it kind of does follow that same that same process, man. And I'm like, I really can't say I've ever heard, or maybe nobody's ever admitted to that before that I known, but I wonder, how, and you might know or might not, but like how common that is, like an addiction, like a porn sex addiction like that. I mean, I would assume there's, a lot more like you out there, right?
Yeah, there is, and I don't know the number of how many people are addicted, but I think you're right. I think that there's a certain stigma that comes with talking about this because one, either people don't know that how this is impacting them, or it's kind of like being a functioning alcoholic, right? I can look at this; it doesn't really bother me, but it's not. I think an alcoholic, you can see the deterioration on your health and the effects it has on your body. Right. With pornography, it's on your mind. You can't see what it's doing to you necessarily, so it doesn't seem like it's a problem. Well,
from what I understood in your description, it's a lot easier to live your life like your regular life, because
no,
it's not. To hide it, I suppose, right? Like
I mean, for me, like that was part of, again, this is something that my counselor helped me unpack. I had all these lies and all these things I was hiding. Like it made it almost impossible for me to have a conversation.
I see. Okay.
With anybody, because I had all this stuff. I was trying to keep all these lies straight. And the porn I could hide. I could definitely hide the porn. And, again, my wife not having access to my phone, which obviously she does now. But not before, not having access to it. Yeah, that was easy to hide.
Well,
for sure.
I guess I misspoke. Choose the wrong words. Just like like you said, it's a lot easier to tell when someone is an alcoholic, right?
Sure.
It's a lot harder to tell when someone's addicted.
Steph. You would know. How would you know?
Mm-hmm.
You would only know by these actions that I was doing, but I was really the only one who knew about it. I didn't tell any of my friends. I obviously didn't tell my family or anybody. Nobody knew. This is just my deep dark secret, and that I thought I would never get caught over. I honestly, truly was so confident and cocky. Like I'm doing so well hiding my tracks.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually,
and that's kind of what I did want to ask. Well, like you start to maybe build like this sense of like, I'm invincible. Nobody's gonna know anything.
Yeah, it's true. Like I'm like, how is she going to find out? Like, as long as I'm not doing anything crazy, and we had our bank accounts separate, so she couldn't see where the money was going. Mm-hmm. I thought it was foolproof. Really did. But that leads me back to the third time that God hit me in the head, the third and final time before I finally woke up there. So she Amy tells me to pray that night. We go to bed. I wake up the next day. She's already out of the house. She had left, of course, and I don't know where she went. Certainly she needed to go vent and go blow off some steam somewhere. So she was gone. So I'm laying there alone in bed. So I'm thinking, well, I guess this is as good a time as any to pray. And I'd never prayed before. So it's like, well, here we go. And then I did. And I just said, God, I I don't know what to do, but I am. This is it. I got nowhere else to go. I don't know how to break free from these addictions. If you're out there, if you're real, send me a sign. Let me know that you're real and give me some hope. And as soon as I finished that prayer, the garage door, I heard it pop up, and it was Amy. And Amy really is the key to this, to my whole redemption story, because I credit her for leading me to God. So she comes home, and I told her we prayed, or I told her that I prayed and that I want to work on our marriage. I'm sorry about all this. And, she was reluctant, of course. Well, of course, why wouldn't she be reluctant? But she's like, yes, of course, we'll work on it. And we went about our business that day. And then that evening, we're on the couch talking, and now it's Amy's turn to get a message, and she gets a random Facebook message from some dude we don't know. And all it says is, "Do you know Anil Getzlow?" Well, I don't know why, but that's all I needed to know. I felt this incredible, overwhelming urge. Like, I've got to tell Amy everything. Like, this is it. I have nowhere else to go. And as I described in my book, it felt like the sensation of having to throw up. Like, you can feel it's coming up and you want to stop it, but you can't stop it. So it just comes out, and you feel so much better afterwards. And that's what happened. I threw up all over the floor of our marriage. And I just told her everything that I'd done over the course of the past 6 years, all the pornography, all the cheating, all of that. And she looked up at me, and this is what changed my world. She looked up at me and said, "Neil," she's like, "Jesus forgave me for my sins. How can I not forgive you for yours? I forgive you." And that moment, I was transformed. I have not looked at pornography since that day. I have not been tempted to have sex outside of my marriage since that day. Everything that I used to love, I used to do, was gone in a heartbeat. Which I'm just feel incredibly blessed. And I also know that for a lot of addictions and a lot of people, it's not necessarily that easy just to walk away from it. And then and while I was able to walk away from it, like, there's still a lot of pain and hard work to go through to try to rebuild your marriage, because that's what I was left with. We had a broken marriage now. So now she knows the truth, and now we've turned to God and asked God for help. So how do we save our marriage? And that's what we've been doing the past 18 months, is trying to rebuild that marriage.
Right.
And it hasn't been easy. Amy forgave me, which was the greatest gift anyone's ever given me. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't excuse my actions. Doesn't mean I'm not responsible for all the hurt and pain that I created. It doesn't mean that I don't have to take accountability. I did. Absolutely. There were some major things that I had to do. And this is where the counseling comes in, not only for myself, but also marriage counseling for us to help talk through and learn how to communicate again. And so it's not easy, but there is this. People always ask, why would you want to share this part of your life with the world? Like, why are you telling people this?
Yeah.
And honestly, it's I feel like I'm called to do it. And I want people to know, like, again, this is coming from an atheist, the most cynical atheist in the world up until 2 years ago. And I'd never believed that I'd be standing here talking to you saying this, but God turned my life around. It started with God, and which is great. And I just want people to know there is hope. And there is a way out. Whether for me, I started with God, but if you need to start somewhere else, that's fine too. Like, I'm just telling you that, like, there is hope. You can turn around, turn away from the demons that have got you, and turn your life around. Because if I can do it, if I can walk away from a lifetime of just pure evil, I know that other people can as well.
Yeah, I mean, great message there. I mean, somebody might need to hear that today, and help them turn something around. I wanted to ask a few questions, maybe
Mhm.
when you were addicted, and I'm just
Yeah,
curious, because
sure.
I was really like fascinated at how it progressed with you, and you went from little things to quite big things like that, right?
Yeah.
At the um I assume you would spend a lot of time looking at pornography and whatnot. um and I mean, is there a way to like quantify like how many hours you would spend like per day, per week, anything like that?
Yeah. So it's that's interesting because in the grand scheme of things, like, well, probably if I sat down and thought about it, it's probably more than I thought. But here's where it changed from when I was a kid to where it is today, and that's because of the internet.
Yeah.
And so I didn't need anything other than my cell phone and to be on Twitter, and I could find any piece of pornography I ever wanted just right on Twitter, and I'd get it 2 minutes at a time, and I would, so it would be like, and a lot of times, so I also suffered from anxiety and depression, and so a lot of times the anxiety would kick in. Porn was my outlet. So
Mm.
I found that, and of course, even before the pandemic, I was working from home.
Right.
So I'd be working from home. If I had a bad meeting or just feeling overwhelmed, I'd get on the phone and look at pornography, and I just start scrolling through the videos and watching 2 minutes at a time. Um, and then, so maybe it would add up to maybe an hour a day, maybe.
I
I mean,
guess.
it's hard, it just doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're watching it 2 minute chunks at a time,
Yeah.
it it takes some energy, it takes some
Mm.
effort to do it. But then, of course, for me, my other addiction just made the problem worse because I'm watching these videos and I'm thinking, well, now I gotta go find the real thing and look
Right.
outside my house to do it.
Right. So, I mean, it's a weird question to ask, man, because I'm
Yeah.
like, it's a couple of us guys here, but I mean, when you were looking at these things, were you like masturbating to it, or you would just like save it up till you could get the real thing?
Yeah, that was basically just sort of saving it up. Again, I knew where it was almost like you become a zombie, and your brain goes on autopilot. And
Mhm.
so I'm looking at all this stuff, and I know where this is going. I know it's going to lead me to want to pay someone to do something. And again, the other part of the internet too is like there are different sites out there, where you can pay people for your own personalized pornography.
Mhm.
And there would be times when you get into that, and it just it's just like it just fed on itself.
Mhm.
And but yeah, I mean, I would definitely save it up. And I would say, one of the things that I noticed, which I didn't even realize until I got past this, was that I was, before I was going to be intimate with my wife, I was watching porn right before that moment because I needed that stimulus
Mhm.
in order to be aroused. I mean, I had conditioned my brain so much that I needed the porn stimulus. Otherwise, nothing was going to happen.
But yeah, I don't know. I say, I mean, and not to judge, but that's crazy,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, no, right?
Uh,
It is. That's where
because
I think that's why I say when porn's a hidden danger, because you just don't know what it's doing to you. It's
Mhm.
rewiring your brain.
Mhm.
It is like a drug, and you get a high from experiencing it, but you also have the downside of that and the dangers of it. And it just, for me, again, I crossed up my wires. Like, I equated sex to love
Mhm.
because I didn't have that love growing up as a kid from my family. I went and sought it out in a sexual way with the people that I came across.
Now,
And I just, yeah, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, yeah, I didn't want to just disrupt
No,
there,
it's
but
okay.
now, obviously, you can find anything you want for free, basically online. But were
Sure.
you spending any money on your addiction?
Yeah. So there were, like I
Other
said,
than,
there
I
was
mean, obviously the prostitutes and all that, but
yeah. there was, like I said, there are sites out there where you can pay people to send you pictures or take their own pictures, personally for you, and have interactions with them. And they're like real, like these are not like professional.
Yeah,
These are
like
just
they have like
regular women.
only fans and stuff like that now.
Yeah. I mean, just regular people. And so I spent a lot of money. I don't, and then I've tried to sit down and think about it, but I had to stop because it made my stomach hurt to think about how much money that I've put into this addiction. And and it is, and this is just kind of a random side note, but Amy and I were talking about, we've managed to sort of get our finances almost all pulled together despite all of my issues with money. And because at the height of my addiction, I took a buyout from my company and got a pretty nice chunk of change that I think I blew through quite a bit of it on prostitution.
Yeesh.
So just recently, Amy and I were talking about, hey, maybe, we could sell and make a pretty good amount of money on our house and pay off all our debt and pay off my student loans. And she got real quiet, and then she got real mad. She's like, I sat around for 8 years while you were blowing all of our money with prostitutes. What makes you think that I want to sell the house and then pay off your student loans? Like, and that's, so those moments, even though we're, like I say, our relationship is rock solid now and we're in such a great spot, but there are moments like that crop up that shows you how much pain that you've caused her and stuff. So it's complicated, but we are, like I said, we are getting better. And it's, I'd say Amy, when this first happened, she turned into like an amateur detective, and she wanted to know everything. She asked all these detailed questions. She went through my phone like a forensic scientist, looking for any sort of information or clues about what I was doing on particular nights or particular days. But I would say over time, which has been the good thing, through communication and talking and going to counseling and rebuilding our trust and all that, those times now where it was an everyday occurrence when this first happened. Now it's maybe once every couple months where she'll just feel this need to look at my phone. And it's even just, and it's funny because like whenever she got near my phone before I was discovered, like I would be like in full on like anxiety mode, like stop, look, like I would like go be actively trying to grab it out of her hands.
Right.
If it was unlocked.
The whole time like this, right?
Yeah. It's funny. She grabs my phone now, and I still have that sort of like that reflex. Like, oh my gosh, what is she going to find? But then I think, and then that's where I can laugh. Like, she's not going to find anything, which is good, right? I mean, that's the good side of the story. And now, so she does have all my passwords to my computers, to my accounts. Our bank accounts are joined. I've got a location app on my phone, so she knows exactly where I'm at all time. I mean, that's, those are sort of the greens fees for just wanting to rebuild trust. Yeah. And it seems so common, like, it seems so easy, but it was something that we just didn't have in place. I'm glad we do now.
So this is the last like pornography based question, I want to ask, and I just want your opinion, because obviously, for addicts, like for let's say alcohol, right? Alcohol still exists, it's still out there, still being advertised. In your case, maybe the pornography business really kind of expanded from, here's a magazine, here's some videotapes. Yeah. Oh wait, here's the internet, and now here are people who call themselves sex workers, doing like their own, pornography, essentially like OnlyFans or what's the Pornhub and all that stuff. Right. And there's a lot of support now behind these, men and women, but mostly women. There's a lot of support behind these women saying like, no, let them do their thing, empower them. Yeah. Pornography is positive for them. If you're a guy and you say like, hey, that's a load of bullshit, pornography is not positive for anybody, like you sound like a dick, and it sucks because you might just, be coming from a a good place, but they want to tear you down as like, oh, you're a chauvinist and you're this and that. But from somebody who's been affected by this, right, and has paid a good price for it, right? What are your thoughts on that when they're empowering, people to like, no, do it, like you're good, like this is a great thing.
Yeah, I understand that, and I get it, and and I would again, up until 2 years ago, I would be right there fighting the good fight for everybody. But um, when again, I'm gonna get a little bit into my religion here. When you get saved, you get a new heart, you have new desires, and I think you see the world a little bit differently. And you know, I've read the Bible for the first time in my life over the past couple of years, and I'm through the second time reading it. And God puts these moral laws in all of our hearts, and if you, I believe that we should follow them. And so I think sex outside of marriage, I don't, I think sets you up for trouble.
Mm.
Um, so I think when we deceive ourselves when we're filling our minds and our hearts up with all of the sex, and the culture just pushes sex, all over us, whether it's, even if it's just not porn, if it's on cable TV or on Netflix, on Hulu, whatever shows you're watching, all of, it's just sex and it's everywhere. And we've become too focused on it as a culture, in my opinion. So I understand people wanting to make money off it, but I also, like, what does that say about our country if there are people out there who feel like their only shot at making money is by selling themselves for sex?
Yeah, and
Like,
as soon
what's
as
wrong with
girls
that?
turn 18, they want to jump on it.
Yeah, like, does that not concern anybody? Like, people are that desperate for money, like that they have to turn to this. Like, so I think there's just a lot of, and we can go down a giant rabbit hole. I'm no expert on any of these, issues necessarily. I just know from my own experience. But I would also say too, like, I'm assuming that there are probably people out there that are in pornography or in prostitution that are there because that is what they choose to do. That is how they want to spend their life. Fine. I believe that there is an overwhelming majority of people who are in these industries that are there because they're forced to be there through sex trafficking, and people are paying money for sex trafficked victims. And I think, to me, that's, as I look back on everything I did, that's probably the one thing that hurts me the most. How can I be sure that all of the women that I were with were all there voluntarily? Could I say that for sure? I'd like to believe it, but I don't know. There could have been a boyfriend behind them saying, you're going to do this and you're going to pay me the money. That happens, or pimp, whoever it is. Like, this happens. I think it's the majority of the time. And the same with pornography. People are forced into it that you don't, that don't have a choice. And then you mentioned Pornhub, like, there are videos up there of minors involved in sex, and there's no way of knowing. Like, you don't know that. I might have come across it myself. And that's the part that makes me sort of, that's why I'm very passionate about it, because I just think there's this unintended consequences. It's not only what the harm that I brought to my family, the evil I brought into my family, but it's also thinking about the people on the other side of the camera or the other side of the transaction, and what are we doing to them? What did I do to them? And yeah, it's because it's just a tough situation.
Now, I want to get on the other side of things. You
Yes.
mentioned now, you're in a good place. Your marriage is rock solid. You're working on you constantly. But the book, like, how did the book come about? Are you an author, or that's just something that came together because of your situation?
Yeah, I mean, I in my professional life, I'm a writer, a communicator. So God gave me the talent to write, and so as Amy and I were battling through this, and again in the middle of COVID, there's not much going on. So I asked her, I was like, what do you what do you think about sharing our story? Are you okay with that? And she's like, yeah, if this means that we're going to be able to help other people that are in this situation, maybe keep marriages intact, families intact that might otherwise have been blown up, then I'm all in. And so from started last November, about 4 months later, had it done, and it just got published earlier this fall. Again, it's called Unmasked: Conquering Sexual Sin and Walking in Victory. You can get it at my website, neilgetzlow.com. And yeah, it was a great therapy too, right? To, not only write about some of the dark past, but just writing about how I changed my life. Because really, and we hear so much about cancel culture these days.
Yeah.
But I was proactive, and I canceled my own culture because I had to, which means, so like, and I look at the time of coronavirus as just like it was God's way of saying, I'm going to take away everything that you love in life. I'm going to take away your access to going out paying for sex. I'm going to take away your love of sports because sports went away. I'm going to take away your love of going out to the bars and drinking with your friends because those bars are closed. I'm going to take away everything that you thought you loved about this world. I'm going to give you a chance to reset your life. What are you going to do? And that's what I did. I reset my life. Obviously, again, it's for me, I put God at the center of everything that I do. That's where it starts. But then I also backed it up with my action. Like I canceled Netflix. I canceled cable TV.
Wow.
Stopped binge watching all of that stuff. I replaced, while I still enjoy watching sports every once in a while, it's not an all day, everyday occurrence like it used to be. I've replaced, and like what I like to say too is that, like, if you think about it, if you want to get physically fit, what do? You stop eating junk food or chips, you go work out, whatever. But there are things that you do to get your body into shape. Mm-hmm. Why don't we ever talk about what do you do to get your mind in shape? And for me, I was filling up my mind with junk. Mm-hmm. Again, movies, cable TV, whatever it is, I was filling my mind up with it. And in order to get my mind healthy, got rid of all that stuff, filled it up on spending time reading the Bible, going to church, watching. I filled it up with a lot of God, I'll be honest. And the Neil of 2019 would look at me today and think, man, you are absolutely crazy. You've lost your mind. And maybe I have, but the point is, I don't have time for any of that bad stuff anymore because I'm filling myself up with what I like now, with what I consider the good stuff that I need for me mentally right now. And so it doesn't leave me any time to think about going back to that old way of life. And not that I'd want to, because I'm just, I feel like I'm just a new creation now, I feel like.
Yeah. Now, as far as getting the word out there, you have your book. You're going to be on a few different podcasts, I imagine. If you're working with Steven, I know you are.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm trying.
And so, is there anything else you're planning on doing to, get the story out there, get the word out there?
I'm still so new and so early in the process for me. I've got some ideas of how do I. I'm still, honestly, I'm still trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. I think there's something else there, but beyond the book. Like, the book is a great story, but what else can I do to help people? And I think there is something there around helping men with mental health struggles and helping men fight against pornography addiction and overcoming that. So I think there's something there. I need to figure out what it is. But I will say also, if you go to my website to buy the book, we're donating $5 from every book sold to Run to Stop It. It's an organization in Kansas City that's fighting against sex trafficking. And so they donate a lot of money to a lot of great causes around the community to fight that. So we're excited to help support that organization. And again, we just, our thinking is that we just want to help and help people know that there is a way to turn your life around, no matter what you might be facing. And if, hey, look, if there are people listening that are in the sex industry, like I say the same thing.
And you know what? Sorry, there are. I know for a fact, but go ahead.
Like I get it, and I'm not. This is not about me judging whatsoever. I just think like I think you just need to. I just say ask God for help about how what should you be doing with your life, and I think God provides, and He'll provide a way out and a way up. But it takes work as well, and like He'll show you the way, but you got to take the rope and start climbing yourself. And that's what I've learned. Like this is not just a one way. It's not just, oh, I prayed, I'm good, I'm all better now. You've got work and accountability on your end to do. But I just I know that there are people trapped in difficult situations and may not have money to eat or take care of themselves or places to sleep. And there are people out there that can help you, that can help you get off the streets or get out of the industry or whatever. That if you don't have the resources to do it yourself, there are places to go for help.
All right. Well, I really, again, want to thank you, for sharing your story, being on here. And I was, really interested in everything you had to say, man. But is there anything else you want to throw out there to the podcast world before we close out?
I just thank you for the opportunity for letting me share my story. And, people can connect with me on my website. If you have questions, if you want to yell at me, that's fine too. I'll take it. But no, seriously, if you want to know more about, getting help overcoming your addictions, please reach out. And just thanks so much for giving me the chance to share. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
Well, best of luck in everything you do, Neil. I glad to hear you turn things around.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. For everybody listening at home, I appreciate it. Thank you. Fuck you and good night. Subscribe to the Ignorance is Strength podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Like, follow, and share on Facebook and Instagram at Ignorance is Strength Podcast and on Twitter at The Ignorance Pod.